Hey everyone, welcome back to another late night session here on Nighttime Mics. I'm Mike, and I'm sitting here in the studio with my favorite person to talk to, Sarah. How are you doing tonight, Sarah?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing wonderful. It's finally getting dark outside, the city lights are on, and I've got a massive mug of peppermint tea. I am ready to dive into a deep topic tonight. How about you? Are you feeling awake?
I am, though I have to admit I almost didn't make it on time. I spent about 20 minutes in the grocery store just staring at the cereal aisle. Have you ever noticed how many types of cereal there are now? It's actually stressful.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. That is the perfect example of what we're talking about today, making decisions. It sounds like such a simple thing, right? We do it thousands of times a day. But man, it can be exhausting.
It really can. I read a study somewhere that said an average person makes something like 35,000 decisions every single day. Can you believe that? 35,000.
No way. That sounds like a lot. But I guess if you count every tiny thing, like should I check my phone now or should I turn left or right, it adds up. But 35,000? My brain feels tired just hearing that number.
Exactly. And that's why we're talking about this today. Why is it so hard to choose sometimes? Why do we get stuck? And most importantly, how can we get better at it? Because honestly, Sarah, I'm tired of being the guy who can't even pick a cereal without a mini midlife crisis.
Well, you're definitely not alone. I think a lot of our listeners feel the same way. We should start with the small stuff. Why do you think picking a cereal or a movie on Netflix feels so high stakes lately?
I think it's because of the paradox of choice. Have you heard of that? It's this idea that having more options actually makes us less happy. If there are only 2 types of cereal, I pick one and I'm happy. If there are 50, I pick one, but I keep wondering if the other 49 were better.
That is so true. It's like we're constantly afraid of making a mistake. I do the same thing with clothes. Every morning, I look at my closet, which is full of clothes, and I think, I have nothing to wear. I spend 10 minutes trying things on, getting frustrated, and then I just wear the same jeans and t-shirt I wore 2 days ago.
I know, right? It's a waste of energy. And scientists actually call this decision fatigue. Basically, our brain has a limited amount of decision energy for the day. By the time we get to the evening, we've used it all up. That's why people often eat junk food for dinner. They just don't have the energy left to decide on a healthy meal.
That explains so much. That's exactly why I always order pizza on Friday nights. I've made decisions all week at work, and by Friday at 6 p.m., my brain just says, no more, just give me cheese and dough.
Exactly. But it's not just about food. It's about the big stuff, too. Sarah, you recently had to make a pretty big decision about your apartment, didn't you?
Oh, don't remind me. That was a nightmare. I had to decide whether to stay in my current place, which is small but cheap, or move to a bigger place that's way more expensive but closer to my office. I went back and forth for weeks. I was driving my friends crazy asking for advice.
What was the hardest part? Was it the money or the change?
I think it was the fear of the unknown. I knew I was okay where I was. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe. Moving felt like a risk. What if the neighbors were loud? What if the heating didn't work? I kept coming up with these what-if scenarios in my head.
That's the classic overthinking trap. We try to predict the future, but we can't. So how did you finally figure it out? Did you make one of your famous lists?
I did. I made a huge list. But you know what actually helped? I talked to my brother. He's very direct. He just looked at me and said, Sarah, you've been complaining about your tiny kitchen for 2 years. Just move. Sometimes you need someone else to cut through the noise and tell you the truth.
That's a good point. Sometimes we are too close to the problem to see the solution. We get bogged down in the details and forget the big picture. Your brother saw that the kitchen was the real issue, while you were worrying about the what-ifs.
Exactly. And once I finally made the decision and signed the new lease, I felt this huge weight lift off my shoulders. It didn't even matter if it was the perfect decision. Just having a decision made me feel so much better.
That's a really important lesson. The stress usually comes from the indecision, not the choice itself. Being stuck in the middle is the most painful part. Once you pick a path, you can just start walking.
Absolutely. But what about you, Mike? You moved across the country a few years ago. That's a massive decision. How on earth did you just pack up and leave everything behind?
Oh man, that was tough. I remember sitting in my room looking at all my boxes thinking, am I crazy? I was leaving my family, my friends, and a stable job, but I had this feeling that if I didn't go then, I would always wonder what if.
So it was more about avoiding regret?
Definitely. I've realized that I'm more afraid of regret than I am of failure. If I moved and it failed, I could always come back. But if I never moved, I'd be 80 years old wondering what my life could have been like. That thought was scarier than the move itself.
That's a great way to look at it. There's actually a rule for this. I think it's called the 10-10-10 rule. Have you heard of it?
No, tell me about it.
So when you're struggling with a decision, you ask yourself, how will I feel about this in 10 minutes? How will I feel in 10 months? And how will I feel in 10 years?
Oh, I like that. So for the move, in 10 minutes, you might feel terrified. In 10 months, you might be settled in and happy. And in 10 years, you'll be glad you took the chance.
Precisely. It helps you get out of that immediate panic mode and look at the long-term impact. Most of the things we stress about won't even matter in 10 months, let alone 10 years.
I'm going to use that. Next time I'm at the grocery store, I'll ask myself, how will I feel about this cereal in 10 years?
Okay, maybe it doesn't work for cereal. In 10 years, you definitely won't care about the cereal. But for big things, it's a lifesaver.
True. But let's talk about the gut feeling again. A lot of people say, trust your gut. But sometimes my gut is just hungry or nervous. How do you distinguish between a real intuition and just being scared?
That's a deep question. I think intuition is usually quiet and calm. It's a steady feeling of, this is right. Fear, on the other hand, is usually loud and frantic. Fear says, don't do it, something bad will happen. Intuition just says, this is the way.
That's a really poetic way to put it. I think for me, intuition feels like a pull towards something, while fear feels like a push away from something. But it's hard to hear that quiet voice when you're stressed out.
It really is. That's why I think it's important to give yourself some space. If you have to make a big decision, don't do it while you're stuck in traffic or during a busy workday. Go for a walk, sit in a park, or just turn off your phone for an hour.
Unplugging to decide. I like it. We're so constantly bombarded with information, emails, social media, news, that we don't have any room left for our own thoughts. No wonder we can't make up our minds.
Exactly. And social media makes it worse because we're constantly comparing our options to other people's lives. You think, should I take this job? And then you see someone on Instagram who has a completely different career and looks happy. And suddenly you're confused again.
I call that the comparison trap. It's like trying to navigate a map while looking at someone else's destination. It doesn't work. Their map is different from yours.
Navigating a map while looking at someone else's destination. Mike, that's going on a t-shirt. But you're right. We have to remember that our decisions have to be based on our own values, not what looks good on a screen.
Speaking of values, have you ever had to make a decision that was right, but really unpopular? Like your friends or family didn't agree with it?
Oh, definitely. When I decided to quit my corporate job to go freelance, my parents were really worried. They kept saying, "Are you sure? What about your health insurance? What about stability?" It was hard because I knew they cared about me, but I also knew I was miserable in that office.
That must have been a lot of pressure. How did you handle the guilt of making them worry?
It wasn't easy. I had to realize that I wasn't being bad by choosing a different path. I had to explain to them that my definition of stability was different from theirs. For them, stability was a monthly paycheck. For me, stability was being happy and in control of my time.
That's a huge distinction. It takes a lot of courage to stand by a decision when the people you love are questioning it. Did it turn out okay in the end?
It did. It took about 6 months to really get things going, but now they see how much happier I am and they're totally supportive. Sometimes people just need to see the results before they understand the decision.
Results speak louder than plans. I found that too. When I decided to start this podcast, some people thought it was a waste of time. Why would you want to talk into a microphone for hours, they asked. But now that we have this amazing community of listeners, they totally get it.
I'm so glad you made that decision, Mike. I can't imagine not doing this every week. It's funny how a single decision, like, hey, let's start a podcast, can change your whole life.
It really can. It's like that butterfly effect idea. One small choice leads to another, and suddenly you're in a completely different place than you expected.
Which is why we shouldn't be so afraid of bad decisions. Even a bad decision leads you somewhere new. It gives you information. If you try a new hobby and you hate it, that's not a failure. It's just a decision that gave you data. Now you know you don't like that hobby.
Exactly. It's like process of elimination. You're narrowing down the world until you find what works for you. I think we need to stop looking at decisions as right versus wrong and start looking at them as experiments.
I love that. Life as an experiment. If an experiment fails, scientists don't cry and give up. They just say, that didn't work. Let's try the next version.
I think that would help a lot of people with analysis paralysis. That's that feeling when you have so much information that you just can't move. You're paralyzed by the data. If you think of it as an experiment, you just pick one, try it, and see what happens.
Exactly. And let's be honest, Mike, most of the things we worry about are totally reversible. If you move to a new city and you hate it, you can move back. If you take a class and it's boring, you can drop it. We act like every choice is a life sentence.
It's so true. We're dramatic creatures, aren't we? We think every fork in the road is a 1,000-foot cliff, but usually it's just a small step.
Definitely. But I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, making decisions as a group. That is a whole different beast. Why is it that 4 smart people can't decide where to eat dinner?
Ooh, I have a theory about this. I call it the politeness loop. Everyone wants to be nice, so they say, I don't care, you choose. Then the next person says, no, I'm fine with anything, you choose. And it goes around and around. No one wants to be the leader because they don't want to be blamed if the food is bad.
The politeness loop. That is so accurate. I've spent hours of my life in that loop. Now I try to use the veto system. Do you know that one?
No, how does it work?
So instead of asking, where should we go, I'll suggest 3 places. Then everyone has the right to veto or reject one place. Whatever is left is where we go. It's much faster because it's easier for people to say what they don't want than what they do want.
That's brilliant. People are very good at complaining, so you're using that to your advantage. I don't want sushi. Okay, sushi is gone. Now we only have 2 choices. That's much more manageable.
Exactly. It's all about narrowing it down. The human brain is much better at choosing between 2 things than 20.
I'm definitely using the veto system next time I'm out with my friends. It'll save us so much time. But let's talk about the emotional side of decisions. Have you ever felt buyer's remorse? You know, that feeling of regret immediately after you buy something or make a choice?
Oh, all the time, especially with expensive electronics. I'll buy a new laptop, and the moment I walk out of the store, I think, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. That was too much money. Maybe the other brand was better.
Why do we do that to ourselves? We should be celebrating our new purchase, but instead we're mourning the money or the other options.
I think it's because we focus on what we lost, the money or the other option, instead of what we gained. It's a cognitive bias called loss aversion. Our brains are wired to feel the pain of loss more strongly than the joy of gain.
So we feel the loss of that $1,000 more than the joy of a shiny new computer. That's kind of depressing, Sarah.
It is, but knowing about it helps. Now when I feel that remorse, I tell myself, wait, Sarah, that's just your brain being weird. Look how fast this computer is. Look at the screen. I consciously try to focus on the positives.
That's a good strategy. Positive reinforcement. I do that with my decisions too. If I decide to go to the gym instead of staying on the couch, I make sure to tell myself how good I feel afterward. It helps train the brain to see that decision as a win.
And it makes it easier to make that same decision tomorrow. You're building a habit of good decision making.
Exactly. But what about those moments where there really is no good choice? Like choosing between 2 bad options. Have you ever been in a lose-lose situation?
Ugh, those are the worst. Like when you have to choose between working overtime on a weekend or disappointing your boss. Both options suck.
Right. In those cases, I usually try to choose the least bad option, or the one that aligns with my long-term goals. If my goal is a promotion, I'll work. If my goal is mental health, I'll take the risk and say no.
I think that's the key. Knowing your North Star. If you know what your main goal is in life, it acts like a compass. When you're lost, you just look at the compass. Does this decision get me closer to my goal or further away?
I love that. The North Star approach. It simplifies everything. If your North Star is family, then the decision to move for a high-paying job becomes much clearer. Either it helps your family or it takes you away from them.
Precisely. It turns a complicated emotional mess into a simple yes or no question. Of course, figuring out your North Star is a whole other challenge.
Yeah, that's a topic for another podcast episode.
how to figure out your life's purpose. We'll need at least 3 hours for that one.
At least. But for now, let's focus on the fact that making decisions is a skill. And like any skill, you get better with practice. I used to be so indecisive that I'd ask the waiter to pick my meal for me. Now I can usually decide in under a minute.
That's impressive. I'm still working on it. I think my biggest problem is that I want to have it all. I want the job that pays $1 million, but also lets me sleep until noon and travel the world.
Don't we all? But as they say, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. Making a decision is about choosing one thing and letting go of the others. It's about sacrifice in a way.
Choosing is losing. That sounds a bit sad, but it's true. When you choose to marry one person, you're choosing not to marry everyone else. When you choose one career, you're letting go of other paths. But that's what makes the choice meaningful. If you could have everything, nothing would be special.
Wow, Mike, that's actually very profound. The value of our choices comes from what we give up for them. I've never thought of it that way.
See, I have my moments. But seriously, I think it helps to realize that letting go is part of the process. It's okay to feel a little sad about the paths you didn't take, as long as you're excited about the one you're on.
I agree. It's okay to have a little what if moment, as long as it doesn't stop you from moving forward. So, Mike, let's give our listeners a few concrete tips. We've talked about a lot today. If you had to summarize your decision-making toolkit, what would be in it?
Okay, let's see. Number 1, the 10-10-10 rule. It's great for perspective. Number 2, the coin flip. Not to let the coin decide, but to see what you're secretly hoping for while it's in the air. Number 3, trust your gut, but only after you've had a good night's sleep. And number 4, don't fear mistakes. Treat them like experiments.
That's a great list. I'll add a few more. Number 5, use the rule of 3 or the veto system for group decisions. Number 6, identify your North Star so you have a compass. And number 7, remember that most decisions are reversible. Don't act like it's a life sentence.
That is a solid toolkit. If I had used that at the grocery store today, I would have been out of there in 2 minutes instead of 20.
Well, there's always next time. And hey, even if you picked the wrong cereal, at least now you know what not to buy next week.
Exactly. It's all just data for the next experiment. You know, I'm feeling a lot better about today's cereal choice now. It was a learning experience.
That's the spirit. I'm feeling better too. It's funny how just talking about the process makes it feel less scary. We all struggle with this, no matter how old we are or what we do for a living.
Definitely. We're all just trying to figure it out as we go. No one has a perfect track record of decisions. Even the most successful people in the world have made huge mistakes. The difference is they didn't let those mistakes stop them from making the next decision.
That's such an important point. Momentum is key. Keep moving, keep choosing, and keep learning.
Well said, Sarah. I think that's a perfect place to stop for tonight. I've really enjoyed this. It's given me a lot to think about, and hopefully it's helped our listeners feel a bit more confident about their own choices.
I hope so too. This was such a fun conversation. Thanks for having me again, Mike.
Of course, it's not an episode of Nighttime Mics without you. And to everyone listening at home or in your car or wherever you are, thanks for spending part of your night with us. We really appreciate your support and your time.
Yes, thank you all. It's been great. We'll be back next week with another topic to dive into. In the meantime, try out one of our tips and let us know how it goes.
Definitely. Reach out to us on social media and tell us about a decision you're proud of, or even a funny mistake you made. We'd love to hear from you. But for now, it's time for us to sign off. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Take care.
Bye.